Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our AppSheet App Jam, covering tips, tricks, and troubleshooting for new users. My name is Lauren, and I'm the content manager for the Google Cloud community, and I'm thrilled to be here today with our AppSheet experts, Christian and Rich, who will be taking you through the content today and answering your questions. So we have a lot to cover today, but before we dive in, just a few couple other reminders that questions are encouraged, so please feel free to add those into the YouTube chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them either in the chat or at the end of the presentation. And for any questions that we don't get to, we encourage you to use the AppSheet community, and the link to that is in the YouTube description. And it's there where you can search for answers, ask new questions, and engage with your peers and the AppSheet team. All right, with that, I'll hand it over to the team to kick us off with the session today.
Thanks, Lauren. Feel free to go ahead and advance the slide as well. But basically, the idea behind today's App Jam is to provide a bit of like hands-on instructional experience in the sense that, so we worked out a demo flow that has a number of different topics that we want to step through. And so they started in kind of basic stuff like how to get started, how do you set up relationships or references, how to do some basic UI formatting or branding as we call it. And then we'll shift over and start going into a little bit more advanced topics. So at an intermediate level, essentially discussing like things like slices, security, filters, chat apps, and so forth. And then we want to touch on a little bit more complex subjects. And it also really depends on how the timing goes. So admittedly, we do have like a number of topics to cover, but as you'll see, we do, have like a pretty broad list, but we may not be able to get to every single thing. But I do want to mention that for whatever things that we don't get to cover in today's session, we want to offer more app jams in the future so we can continue to build on what we're getting started with right now. So as you can see, there's a number of topics there. Thanks to the community for providing all of the good input to us. And if you don't see a particular topic, it's okay. We can continue to either answer it in the QA or just sign it up for a next session that we do. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Rich, and he's going to actually get us started and walk through a pretty cool demo. Okay. Take it over, Rich.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Christian. So yeah, Lauren, you can go ahead and flip this over to my screen here. So the goal today is to cover a lot of different topics in more of a natural way. So we're actually going to build an app that covers a lot of the topics that were asked by the community. And the app we're going to build is a building access request application. And this is basically a good application to mimic a lot of approval workflows that you could potentially need to create for a lot of variety of other different situations here. So in this application, we're basically going to allow users to request access to a particular building or office and then seek approval and get approval from an individual who has the authority to approve a request. And then that individual will receive authorization to get access to that building. So we'll go ahead and get started here. We've generated a table already.
Just a quick note, though, we did have that. Did you want to show them the graphic with the relationship set up like that? So basically to walk that. But
so I'll flip that over in a second.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. We'll flip back to that in a second there. So. Yeah, so to get started, when we're building an application, we need to look at the different entities that are involved in the app. So in this case, we're going to have requests. That's obvious. We're going to have buildings as well. So we have these tables in here, requests that describe everything about a request we would need, who is, who's submitting it, who the employee they are that they're meeting at the building or office, what building they're going to, and who would be approving that request, essentially. And the most important thing would be the status on whether they're actually approved to enter. Then we also have the building tab, right? Because there's obviously buildings that we need to get access to as part of this process. So we can have a list of buildings that are managed in a different table. And then we also have an employees table as well, because people that request access to a building will be meeting up with another employee from that building. So that employee needs to be notified. And we want to have a good list of those employees. So with any of these tables, this is all entirely based off of what your requirements are in this process. So this is up to you to identify those entities and then look at each entity and try to understand and characterize the different fields and metadata that would be associated with those different entities. So we already have a table here set up, as I've been showing you, and we're going to go ahead and build an app from scratch off of this. And there's a couple ways we can get started here. One would be actually from appsheet.com. When you log in, you can go into create an app and start with existing data. And then this can, basically allow you to find the spreadsheet that you're working with and just navigate to that spreadsheet, select it, and then get started with that. Another option would be maybe you want to actually import this into the new AppSheet databases, which is an internally managed database inside of the AppSheet service. You can go to database here and import from sheets. And then this will actually create, in a very same manner, an AppSheet database that you could then create an application from as well. So AppSheet databases are basically a middle ground between something that's very flexible like Google Sheets, but not as rigid as, let's say, a SQL database or a MySQL type database. It's a middle ground with a little bit more user convenience, especially those without any database management, and allows you to scale your apps a little bit further than you could with Google Sheets. All right, so, and then the third option is what we're going to use today, where if you're in a Google Sheet, you can easily generate an app from that sheet by going to extensions here in the drop-down menu, AppSheet, and then clicking create an app. And then after a couple moments, we land into the app editor, where we see on the right side of the screen a representation of the application that AppSheet put together that is showing my requests. And you'll notice as I hover over this emulator, we have a new feature that we recently rolled out a month or two ago, where you have the ability to hover over different elements in your application and directly interface with those different elements and make changes to your application. And this makes app editing a lot easier. You can always turn that off to get more of a realistic perspective of how the app functions in AppSheet. But yeah, just know that they have this toggle here that allows you to either turn that on or turn that off as needed. Now, I'm going to leave this on for our purposes here. We're going to get into the first concept here that we want to establish in our application by going to our data. You're typically going to be starting with the data section as you develop your app, because you need to create the structure and the context for AppSheet to understand how the relationships are in your application. So starting off, AppSheet added the request table that we had in our spreadsheet directly to our app. And we can easily add additional tables as well, especially from the same spreadsheet. You'll see that those suggestions are up here at the top of the screen. These are the building and the employees table from our same spreadsheet. And we can easily click on the building table here and add additional tables to our application. And you can also control at a high level what kind of updates you want to allow for the application. And in this case, I don't want people to be able to delete buildings from the app. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the application. And now we have our requests and our buildings to the application. And we want to look at the relationship between these two tables here and establish a correct reference so that we can actually leverage that information in the buildings table when we're filling out a new request. So in this case, AppSheet has intelligence behind it in that it can detect fairly easily when you have a very similar column name. For example, building here, where we're used to basically associate a building with the request with another table that has that same name. So AppSheet automatically created a reference column type here in our application. So if we click into the pencil button here, we'll see that we have a reference type field, and the source table here is building that's been set up. So that's been set up automatically by AppSheet without needing additional capabilities. The other thing that happens when you establish a reference between two different tables is in your targeted table here, AppSheet will also create a virtual column here called related, whatever is related to the table that you connected it to. So in this case, each building has related requests. That is a virtual column that has been generated. And what this virtual column is, it essentially will display an inline table associated with the building. So you'll see that when you view a building, you'll see all the related requests that are associated with that building. So if I take, for example, here, I have a view that was made in my app called building. When I view this in my application, I can see down below that for each building, I see all the related requests that are associated with this building automatically. And these views here can also be modified by clicking the edit button here, which we won't cover today, but just know that that's available. So as I cycle between different buildings, I can see context behind those buildings and whatever relationships have been established between those two entities. All right, so at this stage here, now that we've added buildings to our application, what we can do now is look at when a user fills out a request and enters a new form, we can see that we have some things automatically have happened, like the requester's emails being filled out automatically and populated into the sheet. And when we scroll down to building, we'll see that because this relationship has been established, we also have a dynamic drop-down menu that can change based off the values in that table. So I have my two buildings from my spreadsheet. So if we were to just peek right back at the spreadsheet, we'll see we have those two buildings here. And as that table has more and more buildings added, this drop-down list automatically changes. You can also have your app employ the ability to add additional records to the target table as well, if you allow for new entries to be made into that application. So in the same form, I could actually add additional entries to that target table too, if as an app creator, I want to allow it. All right, so now that we've had this made, now we want to look at other fields here in our form to make it user-friendly. So we could focus now on employee email. So for the best user experience, we want people to be able to search from existing employees and provide a list of employees that can be chosen here instead of having to manually type in an email. So to do that, what we can do is leverage an existing data set with our employee roster. So we can go back to our data and add our employee table now to our application. And once again, I won't allow for deletes, and I'll add that to the app. In this situation, you'll see that when our employees table was added, we have some different types that could be changed, like profile picture and employee name. We'll want to make sure that that's correct. But we'll want to go back to our request table and look at our employee email field here. And we want to change that from email to reference, because we want to also establish a relationship between this email field and the employees table. And to do this, all we do is need to change this to a reference type field and tell it to use data from the employees table directly. Now, as a side note, we also have this option down below, which won't apply in this situation, but this is also important to remember if you have directly related items. Is a part of allows you to directly solidify that relationship between one table and another. So if one item is deleted from maybe the primary table, all of the sub items that are associated with those items are deleted as well. So that's what this option allows you to do. Only check this if you actually have that complete relationship between one table and another, where if one gets deleted, the other one can get deleted as well. In addition to that, this also allows you to have inputs directly from a single form as well when you have a relationship between those two tables. So you can actually fill out, for example, multiple items inside of a single form as well. So you would use this for a couple similar concepts here for maybe creating picture fields where you can allow users to add multiple pictures to a form, or comments where users can input multiple comments to a single form. This is where you would want to turn on is a part of to really maximize the dynamic nature of a form and not just limit it to a certain subset of data. So with this reference now created, we'll go ahead and save this. And we've created this relationship as well between these two tables. And once again, in our employees table, we also have the related request virtual column that was created. So now an employee, when you're viewing an employee or you're viewing your profile as an employee, you could see a list of requests that are associated with just you. And AppSheet does this automatically without us needing to configure this in the background. So just to review what we just showed you, Lauren, can you flip over to the slide here? We wanted to show this in a visual way as well, just to help understand this, because I see, this concept can be difficult sometimes. So what we did with this employee email relationship is we looked at the table we're looking to create that relationship for. In this case, it was our request table. And that employee email column is the reference column, and it's looking back into the table where that value, those values that get stored in that column, is the primary key or the key in your targeted table. So that's an important thing to remember. Whatever column you're specifying as a reference column, it needs to be the key in the targeted table. And that's how AppSheet describes and establishes those relationships between those two tables. Okay, so moving on, we're going to now look at the concept of leveraging our relationships that we establish using dereferences. So as an example here, when I fill out a form, when I come down here, I have an approver field. And I want this approver field to be dynamically populated based off the building that has been chosen. If we jump back into our spreadsheet, you'll notice that our buildings, right, have a security approver email address that we can use. So we want to be able to retrieve, for whatever building that's selected, the actual approver for that building. So in this case, we're going to click for the approver tab here, the little edit button here, and this is going to allow us to open up the column attributes, and we're going to go down to auto compute, and we're going to set an initial value for this field here where we use that relationship that we created between the request table and the buildings table. So we'll scroll down here in our Data Explorer. So we have our Data Explorer tab here in our formula editor. And when we scroll down here, we'll see we have our building table. And if you click on that, you'll notice that AppSheet locks in the relationship here that's been established between the building table. And I could easily then target the column I want to add and click insert into the formula. And you'll notice that the AppSheet has put in this notation here where you're referencing the reference column called building, and then you have a dot, and then you have the security approver column after that. So anytime you see this notation here inside of a formula, this is called a dereference or a dot reference, and it means that this is a reference column, and then this is the column in the source table or the targeted table that you're using for the application. So with this locked in, we can go ahead and hit save and then hit done, and then we'll hit save again. And then we'll show you when we go in to fill out a new request now, and I scroll down and I choose building, you'll notice that the approver gets populated automatically based off that building. And if I change that, then that approver gets changed as well. So, and then the next logical step would be to hide this approver field, because you wouldn't want users to change that value automatically. And you could easily hide this as well in the background by hitting edit column and unchecking show. And then that'll make sure that your form is just capturing that value in the background. All right, so next we're going to move on to another concept here of role-based access and role-based controls based off of who you are in the application. So the first thing that's obvious here is when I'm in this form, I have a status field that is allowing me to change it to approved. I want to lock this in to make sure that only the approver can actually change the status here. And there's a couple ways to do this, and we're going to cover a couple of those methods here. One would be to actually just change the status field attributes here and basically tell AppSheet when you want to allow that field to be edited. So if we go to update behavior, there's this editable field, and we can go in here to the formula and use that same reference that we created, that D reference, and then check to see if it's the user's email that's currently accessing the app. And what this means is it's only going to allow the approver to actually change and modify that field automatically. So just by doing this, we can then lock that out so that when a form is being submitted and the building is selected, in this example, I have, for the purposes of this demo, I have access to change the status because I'm an approver for the building Excalibur. But if I change this over to Oxford, you'll notice that I can't change the status to approved. So this would be one method of designing in controls for who can change your data based off those relationships in a table. The other method that we can do as well is under actions, we can actually create an action that changes the status to approved and only allow that action to happen when you meet a certain requirement. So we can create a new action in the table called approved. If I could spell that right. And then we're just simply going to set the status here to approved. And then the most important thing here is we want to make sure that this button is only going to be valid when I am the approver of a particular record. So I could go down to behavior, and there's this field here called only if this condition is true. And just like we did when we're editing the status columns attributes, we can also do that same, have that same formula where we're checking to see if the approver is the user's email address. So now in my app, I actually have the ability to see when I'm the approver. I can actually see the approve button. If I'm not, then that button will not appear in the application. All right, let's see what's next here. So another important concept with developing role-based access in your application is the ability to test preview app as. So I'm going to go back here, and I had turned this off earlier, and I'm going to make sure I can see the approver again, just so I know what I'm working with. So I'm going to turn this field back on and save that. So when I'm looking at an app, I need to test multiple scenarios based off of who will use the application. And I want to make sure that this functionality for the approve button is actually working if I log in as different entities here. So I can easily just take an email address that I want to test and use this preview app as field down below. So I can put in any email address that I want and hit apply. and then my app will mimic that individual that I'm trying to test in the app. So you can see here, now that I'm logged in as security-Oxford, who is the approver of this record, I now see that button here. So this is just another way that you will need to leverage this preview app as field to test those multiple scenarios, especially if you have different roles that have been set up in your application. Okay, so with that, we're going to take a little detour here and talk about just branding of the application. So if you go to settings and you want to modify some of the presentation and how the app looks, you have some options available under theme and brand here called settings and theme and brand. You could change your primary color. So, we can make this app purple, our company's purple. You could change your app logo as well. We have some basic app logos. You can also do a custom logo as well, where you can put in any URL from the internet or use a file out of Google Drive. So if I go into my Google Drive here, I'll see that I have an icon I want to use for my app called demo. And then we can modify our app logo in that sense. You can also have a launch image to show to users when the app is opening for the first time, and then a background image as well as additional options. And they function the same way as the app logo. You could also have some toggles here down below to change, to add maybe the view name in the header, to show the logo next to the view name, or even change how much color and your brand color is in your application. Maybe you want a little bit so that it's dynamic in nature for only the view that you're using. So you have those options down below. And then you can also change the font for your app at the bottom of the screen here. The other thing that's available to you is also format rules. So format rules allow you to modify fields based off of different values, right? So you can actually have conditions in here, and you can apply icons and colors and different text fields as well. So just know that that's here, that's kind of hiding here under the view icon, format rules. Just due to lack of time, we're not going to actually dive into this too much, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware of these. So moving on, we want to get into some more intermediate topics here and start to talk about automations and chat apps and how you can extend your application outside of the mobile or desktop app itself. So AppSheet has a new chat app capability where you can take any AppSheet app and actually deploy it into Google Chat that would be accessible to your whole team. And we're going to actually demo this in real time as well. So we'll hope it works. So we'll go ahead and create an app. And what this does, it creates a Google Cloud project in the background that will immediately deploy that chat app into the Workspace marketplace. So it can be searchable by anybody in your organization that you've shared your app with. So we'll give this a couple moments here. And in the meantime, as this runs in the background, we're going to actually build an email notification as well and actually embed an app inside of email. So we can create an automation here where we're going to, when a new request is created, send an email. So we're going to choose that option, and just through natural language, we've created an automation here that's going to notify someone of your choice when a new record is added to the request table. So we can actually embed an application inside of the email body itself by choosing embedded app view. And we could actually send the email to, either, the chat app's done. We'll get back to that in a second, but we can actually embed the email or the application or a view from the application inside of the email body. So for simplicity purposes today, excuse me, we're going to put user email here just so we notify, myself when I submit and show you an example. But you can easily use this in a dynamic way and associate this with the approver of the building. You could also create your own custom email subject, and then more importantly, specify what detail view or form view you want to use itself. So with this created, I'm going to hit save to lock in those changes. And now I'm going to show an example here of the app. So when I create a new request, I'm going to submit a name here. I'm going to say Rich is making this and choose an employee. Building, we want that to be Excalibur because I can actually approve that as the approver, and then hit save. Now I'm going to jump over to my email, and you're going to see that AppSheet's going to send an actual notification. And when I click on that notification, I will see that view from that request be immediately display the details, and even have that action button that I showed you, which changed the status. And approvers can now click on that button and approve things directly from email without leaving the email directly. 1 second here while I get some water. Oh, all right. Okay, so that's just one example of the embedded applications that you can make, right, and send to people so they don't need to leave their workflow if they work in mail primarily. Another option is,
oh, just to chime in for a second, also give you a break since you've been talking for so as you notice on the preview, you didn't have an image there, and that's fine. You don't have to do it, but you could also mention that you had your spreadsheet preloaded with some base 64 images like inline, but that can also be just set up so that you could upload the images in the app itself, or you can also just have existing URL. So if you wanted to touch on that, you're more than welcome to. Because I noticed a question or two asking about that in the comments. So.
Sorry, what was it?
If you flip back to the preview, you can see the image, the images for the actual employees. Yeah, I just let it resync.
I broke it. Yeah. Oh, like these?
Yeah. So like for example, like in your data, you had the base 64 just inline directly into that, but you can also explain a little bit more about like the different options you have for images, and then also how the app itself could allow you to upload and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. This is kind of, for the magic of a demo, but you could embed actual images inside of a formula, or even just have links to images as well.
Yep.
So this is just meant for illustration, but typically, AppSheet's going to store those images in Google Drive by default. Mm-hmm. All right, so now we're going to look at chat apps here. So as we were talking and actually building out the embedded app automation, we actually have chat apps that have been created as well and deployed to the Workspace Marketplace. And we can easily configure what views from our app show from our chat app, and even have a custom message for our chat app. And once we deploy our app, this chat app will be available to anybody that I've shared the app with. So here we'll finish building out our chat app here. We'll hit next, and then that's it. That's all we have to do. So you can see the effort there is more patience than anything. You have to hit a couple buttons, deploy your app, and now you have a chat app here that if I go to Google Chat, or more importantly, maybe I want to add this app to a space. So I have my security team here. I can go to click on apps and integrations and add apps. And then I could search for this community app jam. And we see that application here that I just made with my little demo icon for the application. And I can add that to Workspace. So now I have my application actually inside of the Google space. And when I click on a request, the view, I can see the list of requests. I can even add and create new requests directly from the Google space without having to go into a separate application. Now there's only, this message kind of indicates there's certain columns that aren't supported, and that's going to be just due to the capabilities of what Google Chat can do as far as an app goes. But users always have the option to just open the app up anyway and go into the app directly. Now, You can also combine this with automations as well, where you can actually create and notify individuals inside of Google Chat to directly. Due to time, we won't get into that, but maybe that's a topic for a future session where we can actually go into chat notifications and how users can interact back and forth with the app
Yeah,
directly.
definitely. We can definitely cover that. But one thing you can also mention is that you can even set up a chat app, become a member of a chat space, and then you can, in an automation, you actually send those messages out to all the members of any particular chat space. But we can definitely cover that later at a
Yep,
future
that's
date.
good. Yeah, just like how I added this app to my security team chat space, you can then target that space in the future, and everybody that's part of that space will be notified. Okay, so the next thing we want to do here is back in our app. We want to close out our loop. So far we've created the ability to create a request and send an approval to a particular approver for the individual then to hit the approve button and make that status approved. The final step here is actually notifying the individual that their request has been approved. And what we can do on top of this too is actually give them a PDF document with the actual approval and a QR code and basically any other information we want to provide, so when they come to the building they have all the information they need. So just like we did before, we're going to actually create a new bot, and in this bot we're going to create an event that's going to be for updates only. And for the condition, we actually want to check for when the status is equal to approved. So when the status is equal to approved, then we're going to run this task here to send an email. And in this time, it's going to be a custom template. We're not going to do an embedded app view. We're going to have a custom template, and then we're going to send this to, I'm just going to send this to myself, make sure it comes to me. And then we can, we're not going to modify the subject today. We're going to focus directly on the PDF attachment and how to create that. But before that, what I want to do is we want to create a QR code. And this is just a kind of an intermediate, option that's available. If you needed to leverage QR codes, it's fairly easily done. We're using one of our APIs inside of Google, where in your table that you want to create a QR code, for example, request, I could simply add a virtual column here, and we'll call it QR code. And for the app formula, we have a QR code API. So you can actually just put in the URL and append on any data that you want to exist inside of the QR code. So in this case, we're just going to generate a QR code for the request ID. So maybe in this situation, the individual checking in people at the front desk can quickly scan a barcode to validate that request is valid. Okay, so that's all you have to do. Is you can use any API with a URL that will retrieve an image, and when you save that, you just make that an image field. So we'll go ahead and hit done and then hit save. Come on. All right, there we go. So we're going that. So now we have a QR code that can be then used by our report. So we're going to jump back into our email that we're creating here, and we're going to create that PDF document. Now, AppSheet makes this easy. So this can be found under attachment settings, and you can choose what content type is. We actually have other options available, such as calendar and ICS invites and spreadsheets, but we're going to use PDF here, and then we're going to click create. And AppSheet's going to generate a Google Doc here and populate a template for us to use and modify directly. So you'll see that there's a view button that's popped up. When I click on this view button, you'll now see that we have this template that's available here. And I could actually clean this up and make this my own, right? So you are approved, And then we can reference, other fields here from our app inside of double arrows here. So we could say that we can actually bring in, images into our template to make this look, formally part of the company. And then we can also reference our QR code to embed our QR code inside of this document, along with any other information here. So I'm not gonna go too crazy here, but you can imagine you can, provide all the formatting you want inside of this app, different colors. You can actually add tables around your data, etc. But for this situation, we'll just keep this simple for this demonstration. And then now that we've modified our template, we'll go ahead and hit save and test our application. So now that we have our request available, we can then change the status to approved. Let's find one here. You can see the QR code that's available. I'm going to just jump into the actual data here and change it to pending here. Here we go. Change that one to pending. Boop, boom. Here we go. So when I click approve and change that value to approved, now I should be able to get a value in the approval document in the email itself. So when I open this PDF, you'll see that now I've added and I have this document inside with my QR code that's dynamically created and my images and company images. All right, so those are all hopefully fairly straightforward, and you could actually make those customized to your own branding for your organization. All right, so with that said, now we can actually cover a couple more things we want to talk about real quickly before we get into the Q&A. The other, role-based access is maybe you want to actually create different views for different types of people who use the application. And in this situation, maybe I want to have a view that's available for the approvers in the app. So they have actually a queue of what items they need to improve in order. So to do that, I'm going to create a new view here. I'm going to go to the View tab and create a new view. And I'm going to call this My Queue. And then for the requests, what I'm going to do is actually create a slice of data by hitting the plus button next to the request table. When I hit the plus button, like I said, it's going to create a slice of data. And I'm going to go ahead and create this customized here. So for the row filter condition, I can create a custom expression, and I can basically say when the approver is equal to user email, this will generate a custom table. That's a way to look at it that shows only my information that would be associated with what items I'm approving, from the user perspective. So with that slice created, I can make this a deck view and then save it. So when I view my queue, I can see that my queue is specifically tailored to stuff that I need to approve. You can also add other criteria, which would probably be where the status is pending. So if I needed to modify and add multiple criteria to my slice, I can actually use and here to add multiple conditions. So maybe I want status is equal to pending as well. And then I can have, using the Boolean options here, and or, I can actually have multiple conditions that apply to this slice. So, in this situation, I've approved everything and I have nothing in my queue at the moment. Now, for most people, they probably won't need to see this My Queue button. So we can actually go into the view settings and also hide this view or show this view when I meet a certain criteria. So if I scroll down to display here, there's this option here for my view called Show If. In this situation, I just simply want to check to see if I'm in the security approver list or any particular user. So I can actually retrieve a list of all the security approvers using this syntax here, building security approvers, and then use the in function here to check to see if user email is in the security approver list. And just like that, I can have a view that will show for one particular use case and be hidden if I don't meet that criteria. So if I log in as somebody else now, let's look at, just log in as John and change my role to test out this change I made. You'll notice that my queue, that option to view the queue, is gone because John is not an approver in my organization, so he does not need to see that view directly. Okay, so that's another way to create more of a custom look and feel for each particular user in the application. And it's important to remember that you can design this however you want, right? You might have a totally separate table where you're explicitly identifying user roles in your application. And then you can just perform lookups around those roles to determine what a user is and what he's allowed to see in the application. And as a final note, for security purposes, we'll get into this concept called security filters. It's important to note that slices by themselves, when you create a slice here in your data, it does not prevent people from seeing the data in your table if it's only restricted by the slice. Slices are only for showing data in particular forms. The data is still going to exist in the client itself and can potentially be seen by anyone that accesses the app. Now with security filters, which can be set at the table level, you can actually control what data gets downloaded to the client for the user to ensure that they're not seeing data that they're not allowed to see. And this can be found under security or in the table settings as well, but under security, you have this option here called security filters. And we can then open the table that we want to focus on and create a security filter here. So if I want to make this app secure, I wanted to look at probably a couple things here. One would be, I want to make sure that the users that submit their requests only see their requests. They can't see anything else. And then also, if I'm an approver, I can see those as well. I can see all the requests that I'm an approver for. So those would be the two conditions that I would want to check for just in this demo as an example. So I could create a security filter here that is going to have two conditions here that could be possible. One would be if I'm the request email, if I'm the requester email, and the other one would be if I'm the approver. So either two can be true, and if those records in the table pass this test or pass this condition, then the client will actually download the data from the AppSheet server and the data source and only display that data for those users. So when I hit save in my app, I can see a list of my requests in my request table. Now is only that one item that I am approved for. And if I were to change this to somebody else, we'll go change it back to John. You'll notice that John has nothing that's showing in the app because he's not allowed to see that. So this is a good way to ensure your app stays secure and also allow you to minimize the need to create a bunch of different slices of data as well, because the data will not exist in the application for a particular user if it doesn't meet that security filter. So with that, I think we're getting low on time and we'll make sure to be able to cover some questions below. Next time, we can also get into additional topics like virtual columns versus real columns and what the difference is, and some other topics that we didn't get to cover today. So
Yeah,
I'll turn
also,
it over to
we can
Christian and
go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm turning it over to
I was
you.
just going to say that for the stuff we didn't cover, I did put a short link. I gave it to Lauren if we want to share that short link. It deals with like how to consider performance. Oh, there it is. It's up there. Well, at least I can see it in our private chat. But yeah, Lauren, if you want to pass that on to the community, that's a short link that talks about different performance considerations when dealing with larger sets of data and stuff like that. And then there was like another question with regards to a basically rich text editing for long text. So that's something that we do have under discussion, but it's not officially in a roadmap. So just kind of stay tuned on that, but I will bring it back up so that we can discuss that further for our 2024 planning. So.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Christian and Rich, for this information and the demo. And it's been great to see all of you in the chat and discussing. Before we start diving into your questions, we did just want to share a few final resources. So I highly recommend, if you're not already, and I know many of you are a part of the AppSheet community, but I recommend that you, if you want to continue the conversation with each other and keep the momentum going, continuing to answer and help each other out with your use cases, that you can connect with each other there. And a simple way to do that would just be to leave a comment on the event page itself that we're here today. And that way you know where you're coming from, and you can all connect and engage and keep the conversation going, because we love to see it and you all helping each other out with your different scenarios. So last piece here is the feedback form. So this will be dropped into the chat as well, but you can see it at that second link. Love to hear your feedback, ideas, suggestions for future topics. You are who we want to cater to and make sure that we're answering and addressing your most pressing questions and topics. So please let us know. Should just take about 30 seconds. And then lastly, a few other upcoming events. We'll be back in action with AppSheet office hours on December 7th, covering Duet AI, which I know many folks are interested in. So we'd love to see you there for that session. All right. So I know we just have about a little less than 10 minutes left. So we're going to try to go through as many questions as we can. All right. So let's kick it off. So that first question that you just briefly addressed, Christian, but it was around kind of forward thinking with the rich text editor. Any additional context to add here?
No, I think that's probably it. I mean, I've encountered this as well, and I've had some discussions. But since you mentioned it, I think we can definitely keep it under discussion here at Google, and put it into the longer list for 2024 plans. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. And we always appreciate your feedback and feature ideas. Okay.
We're working on that as well. We have also a plan underway to continue to make sure we pull up all of the most requested and popular features. That's also something that Roderick and I have been working on. So stay tuned. We will have some updates on that as well. So.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Our next question is there an automation process to view data analytics? I am creating a set list app, which sounds really cool, and insights as to how many times a song is included in the set list is crucial.
Yeah, so if you want to flip it back over to my screen here. So AppSheet itself doesn't do analytics very well, but we do integrate with Looker Studio, which is an analytics tool. So the best way to do that is going to be to go to a table that you want to analyze, and then click on this overflow button here at the table here. And I can actually, let's say use a request as an example. In this overflow button, there's this option here to create a report. And I don't think we have time. This takes maybe 1 to 2 minutes. But what this is going to do is create you a Looker Studio report that's directly connected to your AppSheet app. And then you'll be able to perform analytics using a lot of the different features in Looker Studio, which will be, can count and do things like that. And you can have a custom page that you can access with your application.
Yeah. One thing I might add is that we didn't really cover it today, but there is AppScript integration. So if you want to have any kind of like generic way to create reporting in whatever formats you need, AppScript is a pretty good general purpose tool, which you could then trigger off of an automation from within AppSheet as well.
Makes sense. Thanks for that explanation. Okay. Do you want us to still be showing your screen, Rich, or can we
Oh
move on?
no, it looks like it. Yeah, so you can see the final result here for whatever table you connect it to. It actually does a little pie chart and stuff like that by default. So you could get pretty deep with Looker, but this would be a step in looking at how to analyze your data.
Cool. Great. Okay, our next question, which I believe a couple folks also were curious to hear the answer. One of our clients wants to control user access. How do we enable them to add, change permissions, or delete a user without changing the application software?
Okay, yeah, I could. I'll take that. So, but yeah, so by default, if you want to, Lauren, you want to switch back over to my screen.
Yep.
The default functionality is obviously allowing you to specify email addresses or a domain. And I can see where this question comes from because that can become tedious if you have a lot of people using your application. So what we also offer on our enterprise plans are the ability to connect to other authentication mechanisms like cloud identity, Okta, um, Azure Active Directory, and anything with OpenID Connect. So you can actually control access to your app with particular user roles based off the groups that you can connect to. And that's basically all set up through here, where you can then you can actually add different authentication domains to your account. So this would be how you can actually share stuff at scale and give access to your app without having to change the app definition.
Great. Thanks for walking through that. Hopefully that helps you there. Okay. Our next question is, wait, you can call APIs directly with the app formula? So I'm not really sure if this was a question or just
yes, exclamation. Yeah,
yeah.
So you could. Well, there's a caveat to that. It's images-based API. So any API that's a GET, if you understand what I'm talking about, then you'll know what it. Any GET API call that returns an image, you can just use a formula inside. That's an image formula for a virtual column.
Great. That makes sense. And we did have another question around images. So how can a user's Gmail icon be pulled from Gmail and added as their AppSheet icon?
That is that's on the roadmap as we integrate that. You'll notice one of the first things that we've released is the ability to have autocomplete inside of email columns. So if you have an email column that's set in your application, for example, Lauren, you want to flip over to my screen?
Yep.
You'll notice that it will actually autocomplete names. So I could, just search and I have email lists. So the natural evolution of this will be to add, more close relationships like you would expect from, other Google applications. We just don't have a timeline on that right now.
Makes sense. Okay, we did have a question around when will Duet AI be available in AppSheet? So we do have a link that will drop into the chat just now around early access. But any additional context, I know we might not be able to share.
Yeah, I can touch on that. So yeah, we do have it in preview right now. We have some people that are now using it, but what you have to do is actually go to the sign up list, and it is a fairly large form. But basically, if you walk through it, you will see Duet AI in AppSheet. So just make sure you click that checkbox, and that would get you onto the right list. And also, you can feel free to reach out as well, just because it is a large list, and we're working through it. So we'd definitely love to give our community members some priority access as well. But yeah.
Awesome. And we did have a few questions coming in around the recording. Yes, this is being recorded, so you can watch it from the same link that you're using to watch live. So you can go back and walk through it on your own time. And we'll also be sending the recording out to everyone who signed up. So rest assured, you will not lose the content here that we're covering. Okay.
I think there was one question or two about like SKU, essentially the SKU topic. And so if you recall, we did do an office hours session a while back where we did go into a lot more detail about how the workspace expansion of SKU would allow essentially a lot more people on and be able to use AppSheet Core. And so we're still getting the word out on that, but I think we had a short link if you wanted to share that, but basically we can walk through that, or at least you can look at that and see the office hours session that we did cover that in.
Yep, great point. If you can go to that link that we just dropped, you'll be able to see the details covering the different workspace additions and availability with AppSheet there. Okay, so just being cognizant of time, I think we'll take 2 more questions, and I know there are many more than 2 questions. So for any that we're not able to get to, please utilize the AppSheet community. So our first question, our last 2 that we'll take is, what is the best way to transfer an app from my account to a client, including the Google Sheets database? I'm a newbie here, and no need to apologize, or we love to see you here. But any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so there's a couple concepts there. Lauren, if you want to share my screen again.
Of course.
So there, for an app sheet, your app sheet or your apps that you create have always 2 different things. You have your app definition and you have your data source that it's connected to, whether it is a Google Sheet or an AppSheet database or some other thing that we support. So those transfers will always happen independently of each other. So you'll need to make sure you transfer or provide copies for both. Now, to transfer applications, what you can do here is, first you need to make sure you share the app with an individual as a co-editor. So if I were to, share this with Christian, I hope that's your login here. I can make you have the ability to edit definition. And after I share that with you, Christian will be able to request transfer here under manage, collaborate, and process. So the individual that you're transferring the app to actually has to initiate that request. And then after that request has been initiated, the owner will have the button to then approve that and transfer the app to them. So it's a little, there's a couple steps involved, and this is mainly for security to make sure apps just don't get transferred accidentally to other teams. Now for the AppSheet database side, that is also, let's see here. You can also transfer that in a very similar way. Well, probably a lot easier, where you can click the share button and you'll be able to make another one, somebody else the owner of that AppSheet database.
Great. Okay, so our last question that we'll take today will be, how do we hide the menu bar in our own login with Google validation?
Let's see here. Are you talking about, I guess that's hard. If you're still on, are you talking about the side menu or the bottom menu bar in the mobile app? Let's see if we get an answer here, because there's a couple different menus. So, okay. I will show you what's currently possible under theme and brand. So if you can actually hide the menu buttons here under branding, theme and brand, you guys turn that off, and that gets rid of the side menu in your application. Now to remove the bottom menu, all you need to do is make sure you actually pull out any views from your primary navigation. So I could go tuck all these inside of another view or make them references. And you'll see that now my app here doesn't have any menus to navigate to. So hopefully that helps. I'll just cover all the answers there that are possible.
Perfect. Amazing, Rich. Yeah. And there was just a bit of additional context added. I ask because before logging in without entering, I can see the menu and its views. And someone else mentioned that they think it's about the hamburger menu. But in any case, if that doesn't help solve what your question was asking, please do add it into the community and we'll be sure to check it out. And someone else from the community or the AppSheet team will be able to help. Okay, we are over time today, but I really appreciate everyone for taking the time to be with us and for all of your questions. And of course, to you, Rich and Christian, for the amazing presentation and demo as always. With that, I'll just pull up some of those final resources, and we'd love to see you at our next event in the community and to hear your feedback in that final form. Thanks again. Best of luck with your app creation. Rich, Christian, any final thoughts or recommendations before we close out today?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a special shout out to Rich again. Thanks for shouldering the demo pretty much throughout the whole thing here. I think it was very informative. And like I said, anything that we didn't cover today, we'll definitely put it in our list for our next time. And I definitely want to keep the app jams going into 2024. So yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, everyone. You have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, or wherever you are in the world. See you next time.